Hello, all. Welcome to another session of Management Principles and Applications. And today we'll discuss leadership. Leadership. Actually, this is one of the terms which is most investigated in the areas of management. And there are basically two reasons for it. The first one is that leadership occupies a center stage in the field of management because it is because of the leadership the entire show is run. Secondly, it is the elusive character of leadership that has fascinated researchers, and everything, the thought process, the charisma, and there are other characteristics, and for that matter what characteristics makes a leader has been an inquisitive point of the researchers. So there have been several theories and models on leadership that have been developed over years. And but if we see leadership, it is simply the process of influencing the behavior of others towards the accomplishment of goals in a given situation. So it is rightly said that leadership can be defined as a process of influencing the behavior of the people to voluntarily act. You're not forcing them, because forcing becomes bossism. So you're not a boss, you're a leader. So you are a kind of inspiring people to act voluntarily for attainment of organizational objectives. So that is the key purpose. It is concerned with maintaining personal relations with followers. Who are the followers? So there is a leader and then there are followers, and motivates them to contribute for achieving goals of the organization. So leadership is about motivating, leadership is about inspiring, leadership is about influencing. Now, the definitions of leadership. So, according to Gay and Strake, leadership is both a process and a property. The process of leadership is the use of non coercive influence to direct and coordinate the activities of the members of an organized group towards the accomplishment of group objectives. As a property, leadership is the set of qualities or characteristics attributed to those who are perceived to successfully employ such influence. So, leadership, according to George Terry, is the activity of influencing people to strive willingly for group objectives. Also, it is an art or a process so that they'll strive willingly and enthusiastically towards the achievement of group goals, according to Coons and Virich. Now, what are the features of leadership? As we have discussed in the definitions, leadership is the process of influencing people. So you're going to influence them, motivate them, inspire them to do something. It aims at bringing changes in the behavior of the people. So you influence them in a manner that they change their behavior to a more positive one for the organizations. It is a continuous or never ending process. So it is not that once you've inspired and your work is done, you have to keep your leadership or mentorship on for them, so that if there are times when they're weak, they do not know what to do, then they can look up to their leader. Leadership is practice to achieve organizational goals. In the organizational sense, yes, it is to be practiced to achieve the organizational goals. And last, it explains the relationships between leaders and their followers. What kind of leadership it is, we would just check in our leadership styles that there are varied styles of leadership according to the followers, or it may be innate in the leader only. Importance of leadership. One, it influences the behavior of people. Yes, we have just done in the features. Leadership involves influencing the behavior of the people and making them contribute their full efforts for the good of an organization. So, if their behavior is influenced towards something positive, they would positively contribute in the organization, and hence leadership becomes important. It handles conflicts. So, a good leader helps in solving the conflicts among his followers and also removing their negative feelings. It maintains coordination. So, if there are people, all of them following a leader, then they would be somehow, in consensus with the thing. So, they would coordinate better. A leader always maintains personal relations with his followers and provide them the required confidence, support and encouragement. So this helps in creating healthy working environment. Then it introduces changes. So, a good leader helps in solving the problem of resistance to changes by inspiring and persuading them to accept the changes without any discontentment. So, if you have to bring certain changes, what management does, it brings out its leader and tells him to convey this message to the workers or the employees, because if it would come from them there would be a perception that yes, it is for our benefit, and they would listen to that more. Then it provides training. A leader also makes arrangement for the training of his subordinates. So it's like he's training them to accept change, training them to coordinate, training them not to enter into conflicts. So it's a continuous training or inspiring that's going on in the leadership. Then we come to characteristics of leadership. An analysis of the definitions of leadership enabled us to identify certain characteristics. The first one is leadership is a process of influence. So he is going to influence others. So it's a process whose important element is the influence exercised by the leader on the group members. So this is possible only when the group willingly accepts his advice and guidance. Successful leaders are able to influence the behavior, attitudes, and beliefs of their subordinates. Next is it is related to situation. This means leadership styles will be different under different set of circumstances. At one point of time, the subordinates may accept the autocratic behavior of the leader, but in different point of time and under different set of circumstances, only participative leadership may be successful. So leadership is always particular and not general. Then leadership is the function of simulation. What is that? So it is a function of motivating people to strive willingly to achieve organizational objectives. Leaders are considered successful only when they are able to subordinate individual interests of employees to the general interest of the organization. By achieving this congruency, the workers are stimulated to function enthusiastically. So it is leadership is the function of stimulation. Stimulated employees will work better in the organizations. Leadership gives an experience of helping to achieve organizational goals. It means every subordinate in the organization is made to feel important, irrespective of his position, achieving organizational objectives. So, this is possible only when managers make every employee to feel and inspire their importance and the activities performed by them. Then, employees' trust and confidence of leaders influence them. A good manager should always know the fact leadership is a shared function. He shares everything in performance with his followers. He shares his credit, he shares his ideas, opinions, experiences, and shares the blame as well. So he must be aware of the fact that employees' productivity can be increased by pressure of force only in the short run and not in the long run. So he should always remember the fact that force generates counter force. So, with the eye on long term interest, he has to function as a leader and not as a forceful boss. So, these were the characteristics of leadership. Now we come to the functions of leadership. Now, what are the various functions of leadership? So, in dealing with employees, the managers has to play different leadership roles, and these roles can vary. They can be like the first, that is, it acts as a planner. So, the manager is responsible for planning and policy making. He determines the group objectives, policies, and programs for achieving them, because we have understood the importance of planning in our previous chapters. Once you are adequately planned, then you can go on advocating those plans, communicating those plans, and then only you can expect the others to work on those plans. So, for a manager, it is very important that he acts as a planner if he wants to be a leader. Then acts as educator, like I just told you, that once the plans are set, then he has to educate his followers, his subordinates accordingly, so that they can follow the instructions well. So they teach employees not only job skills but also organizational values and acceptable behavior as well. So they are being followed. If a leader is very humble, talks to everybody nicely, then the other people are going to follow that. His followers are going to follow that. If the leader is a snob, he doesn't like talking, then people would follow him to become snobs or with attitudes, and the entire culture of the organization would change. So, the work habits, the attitudes, and behavior of management leaders serve as a role model to the followers. Also, he has to be a good trainer in order to be a good leader. Then he acts as a counselor. It's very important. A manager listens, gives advice, prevent and solve problems faced by the employees. So the people would look up to their leader to solve their problems, or to see that if they are stuck somewhere in their professional or personal lives, they can look up to somebody, they can take somebody's advice. So he has got this a counselor or an advisory role with him. He must be aware of the problems of the employees and assist in solving them. By this, he creates confidence in the minds of subordinates. He inspires teamwork and secures maximum cooperation from the employees. So, he is responsible for proper utilization of human resources. Then he acts as a judge. Now, that is also important. Why? Because he has to perform the following functions as a judge. One, evaluate the performance of subordinates. A manager, when has planned, given the tasks, inspires them to work on them, then he will be there to control it as well. So he'll have to evaluate the performance of the subordinates also, and he has to enforce policies, procedures, and regulations, because without them, without that discipline, the organizational goals effectiveness will not be there. And he has to settle disputes, and he has to, very important is, he has to dispense justice. So he has all the time should be an unbiased person who has organizational interests at the back of his mind. So he subordinates the individual interests and give uh, importance to the organizational interests or organizational goals. So the first one related to these is related to the staffing function of management, and the rest comes under direction. So he acts as a modifier of the behavior of the subordinates. He directs the actions of the subordinates. He is the coordinator. He's going to coordinate everything like we have seen. So he's acting as a planner, a staffer, he's directing also. He is controlling as well. So what is he doing? He's actually coordinating everything. So the leader acts as the cohesive force which holds the group intact and develops a spirit of unity. He acts as the arbitrator and the mediator in resolving conflicts, and he's the controller of internal relations. So all these are a coordinator's job. So a manager as a leader has to coordinate everything as well. And then he's the spokesperson of the group. So because he is actually representing that group of people who believe in him. So whatever he speaks or communicates is a group voice, and that representation of the group so he has to relay their suggestions, concerns, points of views to higher authorities. He takes initiatives in all matters concerning the group. So wherever there would be something related to the group, he would be the person, he would be the key person to whom things can be communicated, and the group will communicate through the leader. So he's the symbol of the group and father figure for his followers. So these are the various functions of leadership that can be seen in a manager or a leader. Now we come to external factors affecting leadership. Now, leaders are able to influence and guide people under them. So, an organization can become more effective in achieving its goals. Styles of leadership are affected by external factors such as organizational environment, demographics, staff characteristics, resources, economic and political factors, technology, and culture of the organization. So let us see them one by one, how they affect the leadership. The first is the organizational environment. Organizations have their own particular work environment with its own values, which is legacy of its past leaders as well as current leadership. So leadership is a continuous process, as I told you. And so, for example, what are the past leaders? So Indira Gandhi was a past leader, or Nehru was a past leader, which whose legacy Indira Gandhi took, and Indira Gandhi's legacy was taken by Rajiv Gandhi and then Sonia Gandhi. So in the Indian context, if we see that the organizational environment was such that there was a legacy there. So these values are the care the organization has for investors, customers, staff, and community, and they determine how the business will be managed. So in the business sense, if you see, Dhirubhai Ambani has given his legacy to his two sons. Now it is another thing that it's up to them how do they follow that. So he has set up this organizational environment for his progenies to come and manage. Now, how good are the progenies? So it is very important that past leaders are important, but current leadership is also important. How do you, or what kind of leader are you, would actually determine how much successful you are going to be. So goals, values, and concepts that define products or services makes up the personality of the organization. So it is the task of a leader to maintain the legacy and keep introducing the new things in order to be able to survive better. Then organizational resources. So leaders are dependent on organizational resources such as staff, technology, finances, and physical resources to achieve their goals. The success of management depends on how well resources are acquired and used. So every organization works on limited resources, right? Now these resources, how they are to be utilized. So money is the most scarce resource. How you put it, where you put it, with how much return you are expecting. is all the is going to affect the leadership and the leadership style. What kind of leader you should be to be able to sustain in those limited resources and make the best out of those resources. Employee roles. So, when an employee takes on a role in an organization, his position is defined by the tasks and the responsibilities he must perform in relationship with others in the organization, right? But employees have varying level of maturity in approaching tasks and relationships, and that impacts the style of leadership needed to guide them. So it is if it is unskilled people, unskilled workers, so it has to be an autocratic style of leadership that you have to dominate them. But if there are self-motivated people, like the people in theory Y, then it can be a democratic style of leadership. So, employees also affect the organization by their work ethic and personal values. So, what kind of ethics and values they are bringing in the organization is going to make the leadership style prominent. So, if it is that they look up to somebody, they want to get motivated, so when they would they look up, so it is the charismatic leader who's they would get attracted to his charisma. So this can be a different factor affecting the leadership style. So roles have pitfalls and roadblocks that leaders must recognize and reduce in order to help staff accomplish their tasks. Then organization culture. So, the culture of an organization is a combination of its founders, past and current leaders, history, and crisis. So, a culture is the set of beliefs which the employees have, the organization has. So, culture is difficult to change because it is the result of long held information and formal systems, traditions, customs, and rules that represent the self image and shared expectations of an organization. So, according to the culture of the organization, the leadership has to be adopted, and established rites, rituals, routines, and a set way of doing things impact everything like company norms as well as the leadership. So, how a worker can be good standing and how worker can respond appropriately for various circumstances has to be observed by a leader, and then accordingly they have to help them achieve the goals. So, culture may have a very important role on leadership. Then, sociological factors. So, leaders need to understand the demographic makeup and cultures of the clients of the organization and trends in the marketplace to design products and services for particular population. So, you have to be really sensitive towards the sociological factors. You are in a market if you are in a developing market, you would like to make a product which appeals to masses, and so that you can acquire economies of scale. So the leadership style has to be observant. Leadership has to see that the marketplace is conducive, or your product is conducive to the market and acceptable in the market. Then economic and political factors. So, leaders must educate themselves on their suppliers, customers, competitors to determine the economic and current political factors that affect the marketplace. Now, political and economic factors, who are the people outside, who are the leaders in the political arena, what is their take on certain things or certain products, what kind of policies are they adopting. So the internal leader, the organizational leader, has to be very vigilant about them and act accordingly. Then technology can dramatically change the business environment overnight. So the leaders must adjust their management styles to help the company adapt those technologies. And that change has to be really smooth. Where comes the role of leadership? So he has to be very communicative and very, he has to give the proper sense of change so that the employees do not feel that or they do not become reluctant to that change. So research and development help leaders to create innovative new techniques that makes operations very easy. So these can be the external factors which can affect the leadership and the leader in adopting certain policies for its followers, for his followers. Now, key internal factors in driving leadership. So, when becoming a leader, especially in today's climate of constant changes with mergers and acquisitions, are a more regular occurrence, the role of the leader has become even more critical to organizational success. When looking at effective leaders, forum work of leaders model shows that the factors in driving effectiveness are one, the personal mastery. So, this is about self knowledge. First of all, be aware of self, be aware of your qualities, be aware of your weaknesses, and your weaknesses, how they can be an asset for you to work for. So, leaders must know and manage their strengths and their weaknesses and demonstrate strong interpersonal skills, and a high degree of emotional intelligence has to be shown by the leaders so that they can communicate well with their followers. They are able to stimulate them to follow whatever good things the leader is doing. So this personal mastery, working on themselves. If you are happy, then you can make people happy. If you are confident in yourself, then only you can show that confidence and instill that confidence in others. So it's the first and very important part is your own personal mastery. Then direction and alignment. So this is about creating confidence in others to be followers. So you have to direct them properly, you have to align them. Leaders must continuously stay in front of changes in the business environment, setting direction and quickly aligning the organization in that direction. So, if you are introducing a change, you have communicated it properly, you have made a base, you have set the directions, and the entire organization has to be aligned with that. Maybe if that is a technological change, then the entire setup has to be different in order to uh, you know accommodate those changes in technology. So that is all the part of a leader who's going to facilitate everything. Then commitment and capability. So most organizations today compete on knowledge, right? So this means the only way to build commitment and capability in their people is to engage employees in three ways: heads, hands, and hearts. So the first one, heads. So you have directed them, given proper instructions to them, they know why, if there is any change that is happening or what is expected out of them. So they are very clear in their heads that what they have to do. Then the second thing comes hands. So, how are they acting upon the things you have instructed them? So, there has to be a control measure. You have to see what kind of, so you have made something or you've communicated something. Now, how has he perceived it? How has he interpreted it? Would be shown through his hands, that how he is working on it. The initial judgment can tell you that whether he has understood the goal, whether he has understood where you were coming from. And if that is not there, then he has to be given another training for it, right? And then hearts. So it is the leadership that inspires, that motivates, influences, and stimulates hearts. So if from heart an employee is with the organization, the efficiency is going to increase many folds. In that sense, the commitment and capability, so commitment of the people would increase only when their hands and hearts and heads are with the organization, and it is the role of the leader to inculcate that feeling in the employees or the followers and enhance their capability for the good of organization. Then execution and performance. Now, effective execution is a matter of balancing short term expectations with long term business sustainability. So, research shows that leaders more often than not execute poorly because they fail to focus on creating clarity, unity, and agility. So, as a leader, you have to see the long term business sustainability. In short term run, you can force people to do certain things, but in long term, it would not work. So, you have to make the goals clear in the minds of people. You have to unify them, and you have to be flexible enough, agile enough to be able to change if something goes wrong. And that execution is very important as well for the performance of the people. So leaders are actually the key drivers in the entire work process towards the organizational objectives or goals. Hence, it becomes a very important part of the management researchers to understand how a leader can work for the positive of the organization. So, this was all about the key internal factors in driving leadership. Then, formal and informal leaders. A manager should also be a good leader. Every manager is not able to provide the kind of leadership as desired by his subordinates. So, informal leaders emerge in organizations. So, a formal one is like the manager, a manager can be a leader, but it is not necessary. There can be certain informal leaders. So, a formal leader is the one who possesses organizational authority to direct and control the activities of his subordinates. He issues orders and instructions to subordinates by virtue of his formal authority in the organization. The informal leader, on the other hand, is a person who, without any formal position of authority in the organization, is able to influence imaginatively the behavior of other members of the group who are willing to submit to his leadership. So, this is not based on rational calculations but on feelings and beliefs of the people in the group. So, the group may also be induced by boastings and statements of potential leaders. Members of the group will look to him for guidance and it needs to be protected. So, management cannot or they should not ignore or suppress informal leaders. Suppression leads to antagonistic attitude towards management. It reduces the morals of the employees and develops informal leaders more. It empowers the informal leaders much more. So it is advisable to make a better use of informal leaders. So the manager actually works in consensus with the informal leader so that he can communicate about the major changes or the goals or the projections of the future work through the informal leaders. So the manager is to develop a good relationship with the informal leaders and should know how to make use of that. This can be done by passing necessary information to them first, seek their advice, bring them on consensus on technical and human problems, and then ask them to train others. So, in this way, informal leadership can actually be used as an asset. It can prove to be an asset for the managers. So, this was all about formal and informal leaders. Thank you so much.